στη θέση να παρουσιάσω, ελπίζω να σας παρουσιάσω την καθηγήτρια κυρία Ανέτ Φρόμ, η οποία θα μας μιλήσει με ένα πολύ πρωτότυπο θέμα, The T-shirt, the 21st century folk costume. Ένα πολύ σύγχρονο, ένα πάρα πολύ μοντέρνο θέμα. Ας την καλωσορίσω και στη γλώσσα της. Είναι μαζί μας, οι τεχνικοί μας μπορούν να μας το βεβαιώσουν. Δεν τη βλέπω στην οθόνη.
Να την καλέσετε. Πρέπει να την προσκαλέσετε.
Μπορώ να μιλήσω τώρα, να την καλώ. Ωραία. Λοιπόν, now I have the pleasure to present you Professor Annette Fromm. Professor Fromm will present us a modern subject, the T-shirt, the 21st century folk costume. Η κυρία Fromm υπηρετεί τη λαογραφική μουσιολογία για σχεδόν 40 χρόνια ως διευθύντρια, ως επιμελήτρια λαογραφικών μουσιακών συλλογών, ως υπεύθυνη εκθέσεων μουσιακών συλλογών, ως μουσιακή σύμβουλος και στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες και σε διεθνές επίπεδο. Έχει κάνει μεταπτυχιακές σπουδές και είναι διδάκτορ λαογραφίας του Indiana University. Έχει διδάξει μουσιολογία, διευθύνει μουσιολογικές σπουδές για πάνω από 15 χρόνια στο Πανεπιστήμιο Τούλσα και στο Florida International University. Είναι επίσης ενεργό μέλος διεθνών και εθνικών, αμερικανικών, μουσιολογικών και λαογραφικών εταιριών, συμπεριλαμβανομένου του ICOM, της American Alliance of Museums και της American Folklore Society. Dr. Fromm, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, how do
we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me, and there's a little picture of me. Let me pull up the screen. Can you see? Yes. I'm very glad to be.
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint. Okay.
Okay, I'm very glad to be here. Με συγχωρείτε ότι δεν μπορώ να μιλήσω ελληνικά. Η κόρη μου ζήτησε χθες άμα μπορώ να μιλήσω και είπα είναι θέμα από δύο πράγματα. Το πρώτο ότι δεν μιλάω ελληνικά συχνά και δεν μπορώ. Και το άλλο είναι εγώ μείνω εδώ στο Μαϊάμι και το γλώσσα εδώ είναι ισπανικά και καμιές φορές τα λόγια αλλάζουν για ισπανικά. Είναι όλα μεσκλάδο. Τότε θα συνεχίσω στα αγγλικά.
Okay. Just help us with your English to be able to understand your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There we go. And excuse me, the team helped me, but now this is not changing.
Go to slideshow, please.
I will start. Walking down the street, almost any street, any time of the day or the night, you're bound to pass someone wearing a T-shirt. On TV, on the movies, or whatever visual media, people are seen wearing T-shirts. And this garment has long since been transformed from a working man's garment to daily wear, much the same way workers' dungarees have been converted into fashionable blue jeans of every size and shape. The T-shirt, I'm sorry that I don't know how to change the slide. Oh. You know, let's just close that then, if it's not working.
Go to slideshow.
The T-shirt is worn for all occasions, from leisure to recreational activities to high fashion events. It's worn by men, women, and children of all ages. Since the last quarter of the 20th century, the humble T-shirt has been transformed from men's underclothing to outer leisure wear and even formal dress. As clothing of everyday life, it carries coded and blatant messages filled with cultural meaning. I'd like to show that the term folk costume is not an outdated label that refers only to an assortment of regional, ethnic, sectarian, and occupational clothing traditions. And T-shirts are now becoming the folk costume of the 21st century. In the past, traditional dress or folk costume, as well as many other genres of traditional culture, were defined in association with rural dwelling peasant communities. In addition, folk costume was especially attached to locality, gender, age, and occupational group. Scholars have looked at folk costume from this point of view of what was worn, how it was worn, and when it was worn. And compared to ordinary everyday dress, folk costume had an expanded function. It was worn in communities that established and maintained distinctive identities. Shukla wrote that wearers understand how costume enables individuals to perform identities that are not expressed through daily dress. Folk costume, like all expressions of folk culture, communicates messages known by the wearer and his or her community as well as others. As an aspect of traditional expressive culture of a group, folk costume has served as a significant symbol. As an important carrier of traditional culture, it was a means of transmitting heritage. In addition, folk costume, as well as other genres of traditional culture, are fluid and innovative. There's change. Current studies of folk costume seem to discount American Don Yoder's 1972 essay as outdated. Perhaps it's an outmoded term that's too narrow. Yoder can be directly applied to the argument that T-shirts are a clear example of folk costume. In many instances, collective identity is expressed by these garments. T-shirts, like historic folk costumes, are a form of social communication. They are expressions of personal identity through the material objects that we use. T-shirts have a very interesting history. In the early 20th century, they were developed to take the place of a one-piece undergarment that workers wore. It was called a union suit or an emancipation suit. In fact, women also used this new garment to emancipate themselves from the corsets that held their bodies very tightly. In the summer heat, this one-piece suit was cut in half and the top was tucked into the bottom. It also became known as a bachelor undershirt. Men working in hot environments, stevedores, dock workers, miners, in particular, embraced this adaptation to suit their working conditions. And because these new styles of shirts looked and indeed were underwear, they were considered to be scandalous, not to be worn alone. So this T-shirt became, or this slip-on shirt became popular with the US Navy, who adopted it, especially for use in submarines where it's very hot. Shortly afterward, the Army issued T-shirts to soldiers to wear under their uniforms. The T-shirt term first appeared in American novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald's 1920 novel, The Side of Paradise, and he included in a list of clothing that a young boy was taking to boarding school. In the 1930s, T-shirts were sold in department stores throughout the United States, and there was actually a shirt called a gob or job, and this was advertised as outerwear. So we have the transformation from underwear to outerwear. And actually by the 1920s, women started adopting the T-shirt. By the 1940s, teenagers were wearing them. After World War II, T-shirts were still considered as undergarments until two movies. First was Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire. He portrayed Stanley Kowalski, a virile, brooding man whose presence heralded the birth of a fashion icon. And actually, for that movie, the t-shirt was shrunk and manipulated to shape his body to create a tension-filled physical environment. The next usage was James Dean in the 1955 Rebel Without a Cause. Jim Stark, the character portrayed by Dean, was the essence of cool against Kowalski's raw masculinity. For both of them, the t-shirt was a way to express confidence as an underdog. Thus, t-shirts gained more attention and became trendy as fashionable outer garments. The undergarment, originally conceived, became a political statement worn by these actors. The use of imagery and graphics was the next stage in the evolution of the t-shirt. And again, with the movie The Wizard of Oz, where workers in the Emerald City wore t-shirts emblazoned with Oz on their chest. It was then used as a political t-shirt, which we see many times today, and appeared in Lifetime magazine. You may know I'm in Miami, Florida, and actually a company named Tropic Cogs in the 1950s had the license to print Mickey Mouse and other Disney characters. And these were some of the early screen printed t-shirts. With the introduction of printing techniques, tie-dyeing and screen printing, the t-shirt designs expanded. The tie-dye t-shirts epitomized the psychedelic 60s that seemed so long ago. And screen printing was a way to have emblems and motifs associated with musical groups like the Grateful Dead and Jimi Hendrix, or Marxist face of Che Guevara, among others. McNair's examination of the use of t-shirts within the Black protest movement in the 60s found that t-shirts incorporate representation of protest movements. By the 60s, the white cotton canvas of the plain t-shirt became a medium to convey and promote a variety of messages. In fact, in 1973, the New York Times labeled the t-shirt the medium for the message. This was a way to carry messages. Printed t-shirts told stories, narratives, testimonies that addressed participation in an entire range of activities such as protests, concerts, and travel experiences. They've been used to voice all sorts of political and other slogans and speak of status and affiliation. A wide range of cultural meanings and social symbols have become part and parcel of their very fiber. They are provided an added value to the t-shirt and the identity of the wearers. Sims found that in the 60s, t-shirts were worn by artists and members of the counterculture as a symbol of protest, and they were considered to be deviant and immodest by the dominant culture. Goldman wrote that high school students in El Paso, Texas, expressed their expanding community identity. These were students from a Chicano or Mexican-American background, and the imagery reflected Mexican-American and Chicano imagery, taken many times from the folk culture. Often political and pop culture designs, such as Cesar Chavez and political cartoons, were found on t-shirts. T-shirts are also an advertisement. In the 60s, as I mentioned, there were Disney characters, Coca-Cola, Beatles albums, Pink Floyd, and other musicians, athletic teams. While carrying meanings, the graphics on the t-shirts serve to represent consumptive symbolism. We are in a consumptive society who buys. T-shirts are also souvenirs. They show others what types of holidays have been taken and where. They are active promoters of memories and symbols of trips that might have been out of the or beyond the financial range of others, and thus convey status. There's another role of t-shirts, and that is that they, unlike folk costume, they express self, not rather than the collective. So the t-shirt has grown from a work staple to one of the best known accommodating garments. It's been transformed in a piece of clothing that makes a statement. Like the folk costume of the past that alerted others of the wearer's origins, the t-shirt is a promotional product that advertises products and services. At this intersection, the t-shirt moved from being a universally worn folk costume, a form of dress through which different aspects of identity are addressed. And I propose that they are a folk and often festival dress. Like many forms of traditional culture, they exhibit one of the defining hallmarks of folk culture. They exist in variations and varieties, different styles, colors, and sizes to suit the unique tastes of global citizens. Thank you. And I apologize for not accessing the PowerPoint. Thank you very much.